Check 1, 2.
We're getting started in just a second. I just wanted to test the live stream. We're all good to go. Okay, if everybody wants to mute their cell phones or make sure they're turned off, we'll be starting in just a quick second.
Oh, got the tan shirts up front. Excellent. All right, well, good morning. They told me it was a little noisy out here. I was expecting a little bit of a ruckus. Well, good morning and welcome to the Detroit Industry Training Center. My name is Michael Richard. I'm the business manager of IBEW Local 58. I have the honor and the pleasure of representing the men and women of Local 58. I'm biased, but I always say it every time I get the opportunity, the absolute best electricians on the planet. And we're very proud of that. So on behalf of them, on behalf of our contractor partners at NECA, and as well as the staff here at the Electrical Industry Training Center, welcome. And of course, we're extremely pleased to host you and the governor at our facility. The center provides training and continuing education for journeyman electrician members of Local 58 and the signatory contractors represented by the National Electrical Contractors Association of Southeast Michigan. This facility and our training program is a joint effort between labor and management, and to say we take our training seriously is a huge understatement. We invest over $4 million each and every year to the training, the development, and the recruitment of the world's finest talent. That's $4 million of our own members and money invested into our program, into our people. That investment allows us to provide the ongoing high-level training for our members that keeps them ahead of the ever-advancing and ever-changing technology driving the electrical industry today. Quite simply, we train the best electricians and the best electrical contractors in the world here. And I know I've been called out a few times on that statement, and that we're bragging a bit, but it's not really bragging if it's true. So I never have a problem making that statement. So, and as the electrical industry professionals, we continue to see the intersection of technology, data transfer, and communication in the facilities we build. The buildings are becoming increasingly more complex and integrated. Quite frankly, we're on a mission to help our customers apply technology to improve processes, building efficiency, and to maximize energy reduction. Strategies like advanced lighting, lighting controls, building automation systems, and the integration of renewables and our conversations that we have daily with our customers. Energy reduction in commercial and industrial facilities free up more capital for expansion and job creation. It makes good sense, good business sense, in addition to technology advancement, market-driven programs like PACE, which is the Performance Access Clean Energy Financing, allow building owners to implement energy reduction measures and pay for them through the energy savings over the course of the program with no out-of-pocket upfront expenses. We see tremendous opportunity in the market for energy reduction strategies in the commercial and industrial facilities as well as in the home. And we were just having a conversation. I think the governor is going to be looking at implementing a lot of that into his new condos. So I'm glad we had the opportunity to show him some of that here today. So,
good marketing.
So it is really an exciting time to be an electrician and to be an electrical contractor. And it's also a great time to be an apprentice and be in our program. The economy is improving, and that means we can expand the number of folks that we are bringing into our program. And our apprentices begin earning wages and benefits from day number one. And it's a full-time job. We pay you to learn our trade, our craft, and get you started on your career. Our apprentices over the 5-year program will earn over $225,000 in wages and benefits by the time they graduate. The average graduate earns between $65,000 and $80,000 per year, plus wages and benefits. Oftentimes much more than that, depending on the kind of work that we got going on. To give you an example, last year we brought in 75 apprentices, and with everything that's picking up around here in the great state of Michigan, we're looking at hopefully bringing in 150 new apprentices into the program this year. And as the market grows, we have to continue to grow with it. So the main thing is that all of the men and women in our program, when they graduate from the program debt-free. And like I said before, on that way to their career, they have vested into their pension, they have health care, they have everything built and ready to start them off, and they're not looking at the debt that a 4-year degree would be that they would incur getting a 4-year degree. So one of the main things that we talked about when we were walking around the governor is the need for math skills, and we've been stressing that, and a lot of our apprentices, especially the ones in the first and second year where it's a math intensive, know what I'm talking about. So we've been going around, and certainly with the governor talking about the skill trades and the needs for math skills in the STEM edge programs, it's been helping us and opening up the dialogue with the school districts to get in there and explain that we have a viable, very nice career path. Not everybody is cut out to go to college, and not everybody has the opportunity to go to college, but we have a great opportunity here, and I thank the governor for opening up that conversation. It certainly make it a lot easier for us. So again, thank you all for joining us this morning. We encourage anybody who would like to stay afterwards and take a tour of the facility. If anybody is interested, we're more than happy to walk you through and give you a tour of the facility once at the conclusion of the energy message. So I think I've droned on long enough. With that, it's my great pleasure to welcome the governor of the great state of Michigan, Rick Snyder.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Michael, you did a great job. That was fabulous. And it's great. And I want to thank the IBW and your contractor partners for creating this great facility and a wonderful tour and the great work you do. It's great to be at the AITC. And I really do encourage all of you, if you have not toured this place before, to go on the tour when it's done. I had a wonderful tour, seeing outstanding things, and it was really exciting to see the wonderful work going on here and the opportunities. And I would reiterate what Michael said about these are wonderful career opportunities for people. And it does involve the skilled trades. And we need to emphasize that more and more to people across the state of Michigan. And math is important. So I got really excited. Michael could see that. I found one of the great apprentices, and we looked at some fractions together on our tour today on how to bend conduit. Because you can't bend conduit right if you can't do math. So that's one of the things that is critically important. So I viewed this as a double opportunity to, again, promote the skilled trades, particularly the electrical field today, but then to talk about the energy future for Michigan, and they go together. As we look at our energy future, you're going to think in the back of your mind how important hearing about lighting, electrical, renewables all are, and the great intersection and the great growing opportunity that should happen within the state of Michigan. So thank you for hosting us. Before I get started, I just want to introduce 2 or 3 groups of people that we have here. I want to start, because we're in Macomb County, it's great to have Mark Hackle with us today, our county executive. We're both on a pothole campaign, as you know. We also have a great group of state representatives, so I'd ask all our state reps to stand up and let the wonderful crowd see how many great representatives of our legislature we have here today. So thank you. And I'm very proud to say we have the Michigan Public Service Commission, so I'd ask our commissioners to stand up so we could recognize them and their fine work. And this has been a partnership effort. A lot of people have worked on this message. We actually started a couple years ago on talking about Michigan's energy future. But before I talk about Michigan's energy future, I think it's important to say, where are we at today? And the good part is over the last few years, we've made some tremendous progress in Michigan's energy policy and what we look like today. But I'm even more excited about the future. So I've got a lot of charts here, so I'm going to walk around a little bit to sort of give you a background of where we're at and where I believe we should be going over the next 10 years, and what are the guiding principles about how we get there. So hopefully you'll stay with me. I'm excited. If you come look at 2015, and again, this goes back to we did a policy back in 2008 that was put in place that talked about a number of things, including reducing energy waste and renewables. We have done relatively well over the last few years. I'll actually come to this side so some of you can see this better. But if you look, we've got reducing energy waste by 7%. That's a fairly significant number if you consider it's not been that many years. So we've been hitting good goals there. Our renewables is at 9%. And one question I know I would get from people, they'll say, why isn't it 10? Because our standard was actually 10. Well, we actually had it so you could get some credits and allowances for doing things in Michigan. So actually the technical number is slightly less than 10 in terms of the generation capacity. But if you look, we have nuclear at 17%, natural gas, and then coal. I did both versions of graphs for you because a lot of times people don't appreciate energy waste elimination and how important it is. Because usually when people go to a point in time, they only go to how we're getting our power, not to what power we avoided using. So I thought it really important as part of this presentation to step back to say, when you look at this pie chart to say this is where our generation comes from, you should keep in mind that this piece is the best answer yet. The energy you don't use is the most affordable, reliable, and environmentally conscious result you can get. So I think it's really important to emphasize that. So if you look at where we're at today in terms of actual generation, It's a pie chart that we should be proud of in many respects, but we have a big issue. And there is a big problem. And to be blunt, it's really simple. It's called coal. We're one of the top users of coal in the country. And coal has lots of challenges. And I think most of us would agree when you look at the analysis, the long-term future is going to be moving away from coal because it has many constraints, particularly from the environmental challenges. To do this in an energy efficient and an environmentally efficient way is extremely expensive. So in Michigan, you're going to see us making a major move from coal to other sources of energy. In fact, the federal government is actually pushing us in that direction. So one of the key things you should keep in mind as we look at our mix, in fact, we're going to probably be having 10 coal plants go offline in the next few years in the state of Michigan, which is a huge amount of generation. 1 up in the UP and 9 in lower Michigan. So how do we solve that answer moving forward? So we have to redo our mix. And it's a mix that can move to Michigan's advantage long term. So it's not a bad answer. It's a good answer. But we need to be cognizant of this answer is coming whether we like it or not in terms of the timing. So let's be proactive and design a policy to accommodate that. When you look at doing a 10-year plan, and I selected 10 years because you have to strike that balance of what's long enough so you can do really strategic planning, but not too long where you're sort of guessing at what the future is. 10 years seemed like a very good time horizon to say, let's pick a 10-year horizon to work within. So we're talking 2015. You'll see we're talking 2025 over there. Also, there are 2 huge variables that we need to look at when we're looking at designing an energy policy. There's a lot of variables, but 2 major ones. One is what is the federal government going to do? To be open with you, in my view, the federal government does not have a comprehensive energy policy, and that's a major challenge in our country. Those of you that think you can guess what the federal government's going to do, you probably should be headed for Washington or Vegas. We have major problems and issues, with the federal government in so many different capacities. So that makes having some flexibility, adaptability is critically important. The other one is we want to respect the marketplace in terms of making sure it makes good economic sense. And over a 10-year period, you can see there's been a lot of volatility in different fuel sources, fuel prices, evolving technologies that can actually be a positive. So we need to be open-minded to say we need to be sensitive to the marketplace because that gets to affordability and environmental issues. So as I go through this and I start talking about 2025, I'm going to do it in 4 different areas. I'm going to talk about adaptability, I'm going to talk about reliability, affordability, and environmental protection. Those are the key things that we're trying to look at, how they interact and how do we come up with the best policy. And I hope that just makes common sense to you. So with that, let me start talking about adaptability. And I've mentioned the 2 key variables we need to look at and the fact we're doing a 10-year planning horizon. So now I'm going to start moving this way. A couple things when you start looking at these pies. I'll use this just as an illustration, but then I'm going to walk through all 4 of these graphs. The first thing is, I mentioned to you, we're a huge user of coal. It's clear we're going to move away from coal. So this piece of the pie is going to get reduced. I'll skip to nuclear in the sense that nuclear has been a solid source of energy in our state, and it does reasonably well on these metrics. But there's a lot of issues about, is nuclear going to change in the next 10 years? It is possible. But because of the federal government policies in particular, it's challenging to see why this could change much. So you'll see coal go down. You'll see nuclear stay about the same in terms of what its generation is. Then the real question is, what happens to the other pieces? What drives your decision-making in those other pieces? And the starting point, in my view, is you start with eliminating energy waste. That's the single most important driver when you do the next level of analysis. And we have a huge opportunity to drive out a lot of energy waste in our state. So when you look at all these charts, you'll see both those charts, we're assuming in the next 10-year period, we can talk about eliminating energy waste that would account for 15% of the energy we would otherwise use in the state. That's a huge opportunity, folks, 15%. And when you say, how can you get to 15%? It's very doable. And again, this is where I'll go to that point. And I'll start with affordability, because the part, again, I like about energy waste, it's a winner on all 3 of the other metrics. is the most affordable energy you can get is the energy you never use. Because you didn't need to build the power plant, you didn't need to buy the fuel, you didn't need the transmission system. And the great part is our utilities in Michigan have had a tremendously positive history of doing energy waste well. They've done a number of programs, and to give you an idea of the payback numbers that were presented to me is roughly, it's a third of the cost compared to actually putting in energy generation capacity. So it costs as third of much to do this as it does the other items from a utility perspective. Now, a consumer perspective, it may vary if you're a residential user. But again, we can all think of illustrations where you can do better if you made an investment in reducing your energy waste, whether it be a new high-efficiency furnace, more insulation, other answers there. And I'll talk about how we can help encourage that in a few minutes. But energy waste is a huge opportunity for us to look at. To get to 15%, the other thing I'll say is, and I want to compliment the work of the MPSC and the MEDC, is they've done an extensive analysis, and they have a report online that you can go look at to say, here are energy waste elimination opportunities across Michigan. When we came to the 15%, we only assumed about half of those on that list would happen. So when I even say 15%, it may be possible to do better than that, because that's the list today. So we're not assuming anything outrageous here to get to this. Only about half of that list is assumed here. So giant opportunity. Now, how do we help encourage that, or how does that fit in? And I'm sort of skipping around a little bit, but I want to talk about affordability. Because again, if you want to make energy more affordable, if you don't use it, you've saved money. And I talked about utilities, a third of the cost, consumers can vary. But there are things we can do to encourage a lot more energy waste elimination. One great thing that we're proposing in the message, and we'll propose to the legislature, is can we allow on-bill financing for energy improvements to eliminate energy waste in a residential home. One of the challenges we have is particularly for people that rent, lower income people that rent. Right now, there's no real motivation to have energy efficiency happen, if you think about it. The landlord typically gives the bill to the tenant, so they have no motivation to really invest in energy efficiency. You have a tenant that's going to be there for a renter for an unknown period of time, so they're not planning on being there for 5 years or so to look at a payback, or 3 years even quite often. So they're not investing in energy efficiency, so nothing happens. That's the worst answer of all. If you go to on-bill financing, which is done in a large number of other states, you really create an environment by having that bill come through your energy bill. It goes with whoever's paying that utility bill. And it really creates an environment to say, hopefully, if you do the financing right and you have good financing terms, and you look at the energy you're going to save by making that improvement, your net bill comes down. So everybody wins. The landlord will own the long-term improvement, the renter will have lower costs by having a lower utility bill, and we'll be better off as a state by having less energy waste. It makes a whole lot of sense. So that's one of the proactive opportunities that I really encourage people to look at energy waste as one of our outstanding leading points we should be doing. Because again, I talked about affordability, but reliability, if you don't need it, it's pretty reliable. And in terms of environmental issues, if you don't use it, burn it, consume it in some fashion, that's the best answer. So one of the starting points for all the 2025 scenarios, both scenarios I'm showing you here, is we're assuming energy waste at 15%. We also show the prior energy waste, which goes down a little bit because the pie has changed size. So if you look at the combination here, we're roughly at 21%. In 2025, if you go back to 2008 to say 21% of our energy capacity is really because we've gotten more efficient. We've eliminated waste. That's an awesome answer. Now, why do I have two different sets of pieces here? One, I wanted to show you with and without waste. But the next big variable is, what's the balance between the other two pieces of the pie I haven't talked about yet? We have two other major sources of potential energy generation capacity. One is natural gas, the other is renewables. And the reason I have two sets is we're actually recommending a range. Again, this is where we want to be sensitive within a range, but an achievable range to say between these two numbers, there's a great answer. And it will really vary based on 2 or 3 variables we don't know all the answers to. But let's set up a range that makes sense. And I'll talk through the decision-making criteria. But essentially what we have is if you look at the greenest sources of energy, which would be waste and renewables, it happened to work out well that by 2025 we would believe between 30%, if you add these 3 pieces up, between 30% of our energy in 2025 to 40% of our energy can come from our cleanest sources, which are renewables and the elimination of energy waste. That's awesome. And I believe that puts us as a leading state in many ways in terms of standing out. So the key question then is, how do you really come up, as I said, the decision between these 2 pieces? There are a couple key criteria. One is simply the question of you can't have all renewables most likely because you have a baseload question. Renewables do not provide a good answer of providing baseload energy. Natural gas is a great answer for that. Natural gas I like compared to coal. We all like that. I hope we like that decision because we're a natural gas state in Michigan, and we should be proud of that. It's much cleaner. It's actually relatively low cost. Natural gas in Michigan, we're one of the lowest cost states, and that's one of the reasons you see us being relatively low in terms of some of our energy bills compared to the energy we use because of natural gas being in our pool of options. So the real question is how will natural gas compare to renewables in terms of cost structures? So the variable we set up here is to say if natural gas is more expensive than renewables, we could expect these 2 pieces to account for 40%. If natural gas is less expensive than renewables, it could be in the 30% range. What we'd expect in any case is not at all to be natural gas because renewables play an important focus. Even if they're more intermittent, they're not base load. It's good portfolio management because natural gas prices are low right now, but they've tended to be fairly volatile in terms of bouncing around. And I think we need to be sensitive to understand that prices can change, and we should be building that into our equation to make sure we have a balanced portfolio. So the good part is I believe there's even upside from the 40% scenario in terms of better answers. So the one I'm going to really focus in on is using this one as I come back to talk about some of the other criteria. But what we're suggesting now in terms of overall policy to make sure we're adaptable is to say coal's going to get reduced, energy waste is 15% for the next 10 years, and then based on energy prices, renewables and natural gas will vary between a range that would give us 30 to 40% extremely clean. Fairly straightforward. Not easy, but straightforward. In terms of the pieces to look at, in addition to that, to go back through and give you some analysis of some of the other parts that go with that, though, again, affordability would say between natural gas and renewables, let's pick the best answer and do it in a portfolio approach. A couple other things in terms of affordability, I've talked about a number of them, is this whole issue about let's work together. So I mentioned how we looked at on-bill financing as one opportunity. I'd also suggest we want to work with the Michigan Public Service Commission on working with our utilities on how we evaluate projects in our state to make sure we're looking at energy waste and other programs the same way we look at generation capacity in terms of review structures and everything to make sure we're making the most efficient answers there. Let me move on to reliability, though. And I'll come back. I got a couple fun things to come back on affordability, but I'm going to move to reliability right now. One of the big issues is there's 2 levels of reliability that we need to get at. One is at the more community level, individual level about having reliable power. The other one is how do we look at the system reliability? When you talk about the individual level or more the consumer level, the part we appreciate, we see in our lives every day, we've occasionally had some tough time periods in the past. If you remember early part of the last decade, the lost decade, we lost power for a bunch of days. That was really ugly. 2012, some of us had some pretty tough times. Actually, it hit the west side of the state even worse in terms of losing power for a couple days or several days for a number of people. We need to improve on that. The good part is we have made improvement, but there's more room to go. So back in 2012, we actually said the standard we'd like to get to is to have, on average, one outage or less a year for our consumers, and to have those outages last less than 2.5 hours. The good part is I can tell you on the outage part is our average is now 0.8. We are below 1 outage per person on average. Some of us may not be fortunate enough to really see all that. I can personally attest to that. I've had few more outages where I happen to live, but I got a lot of trees around me. But we're doing well and moving in that direction. I want to compliment the utilities and the electrical people for their good work to get out and clear the lines, to do better work. We have seen significant improvements, but we need to stay on that path. So that's one opportunity. One part of getting that better and better in terms of helping our utilities identify where we have outages and how we address those outages is smart metering. So I'm proud to see our largest utilities moving towards more and more smart metering, but that's something that can be of a benefit to all of us, because if you think about it, instead of wondering or waiting for that call to come in to say, I don't have power, I don't know if my neighbor doesn't have power, I don't know where all the power's out, if they're smart meters, they can immediately know where all those issues are. It's a huge improvement. Now, the fun one I want to mention, if you have a smart meter, and sometimes people hesitate because of privacy concerns or other things if they have a smart meter, it is all manageable, folks. Smart metering is a good thing. And I was going to give you a personal example. Not only will it help you on reliability, but it can help you on affordability. The fun part here, and I happen to be a DTE customer with our residents, is they help hook me up with a great application. So I have this app on my phone, and I can show you real time now the power consumption in my house. And it makes a difference if you measure something. For those of you that are Fitbit, Jawbone users, you know you measure your steps every day, and you improve your health. You can do the same thing in terms of your energy consumption. Because this actually comes up and gives me challenges. And one of my challenges now is to reduce my consumption by 5% over last week. So I am driving my family nuts because I can look at this and say, turn that off. It doesn't tell you to alleviate the privacy concerns. All it does is tell you overall use. But you can see spikes in times you're doing better or worse. So you can spot that time where the kids may left something on, or that microwave's going a long time, or something else. So you can help give some advice on how to save energy and save money. So again, that's where it's not just one pillar you can do good work with, but a smart meter can help with reliability and affordability. On the system side, in terms of system capabilities, one of the things that's important is we have this capacity. And I mentioned how we're having all these coal plants go offline. We're having new sources have to come to the table to solve that problem. I was going to mention in particular, we've had a huge power problem in the Upper Peninsula. And I'm proud to say we're resolving that problem. It's not fully resolved yet, but because of good partnership between utilities, between companies, between municipalities, and consumers, we've worked hard on making sure the UP had power. To give you an idea, they were going to have a significant lack of capacity that was going to show up in affordability, that they were going to be forced to pay upwards of potentially $120 more a year for an average consumer of energy in the UP for some time period because of a capacity problem up there. We've been able to get that eliminated in terms of the monthly charge that was part of that very quickly. But that shows how important it is to recognize that this capacity issue, this reliability question, shows up in affordability and everything else also. Now that gets to the point in the Lower Peninsula. It's important we do have this capacity issue. One part of that I think we do need to address is this whole question of energy choice. And this is a topic that typically polarizes people very quickly. This is the topic of choice. What I would say to you is our current system does not work particularly well. I think we're at risk on the reliability side. I think it's created issues on the affordability side. It's allowed up to 10%. I think we need to modify how that program works. I'm not suggesting nor recommending it potentially get eliminated, but it needs to change. And the issue is one of underlying capacity. to deal with a reliability question. I believe if someone is part of that choice program, that the utility provider they're working with needs to guarantee capacity. That's a big problem we have right now. That's not required. So everyone coming to the table to provide energy in terms of a utility provider or a generation capacity provider needs to commit that they're going to provide capacity long enough so the system can stay intact and stay whole and provide reliable power to everyone else. Because having a choice doesn't mean your choice should come at the expense of someone else. It should be a fair choice. So what I'm promoting now is a fair choice program, which basically says, and again, a retail customer or someone buying from an alternative provider doesn't do this. But what we're going to ask, what I would like to see working with the MPSC, is we ask that anyone as an alternative provider under the choice program is, they need to go to the MPSC and on a rolling 5-year basis prove they have guaranteed capacity that to provide reliable power. So they can't leave the rest of us potentially supporting them or otherwise subsidizing them or creating a huge grid problem, which is possible if we don't do this. So the way it should work then is if alternative providers that are part of the choice program, they should go to the MPSC and present a plan that can get approved to say there's guaranteed power, basically, for that time frame on a rolling 5-year basis. Then it's a fairer system. And I would still keep the 10% limit, to be open with you. I don't think we're in any position to, until we get that worked out and working well, we shouldn't be talking about going any higher, and I know some people would prefer to go lower. But what I'm recommending today is a fair choice program. That if you're going to play, you have to carry your weight in terms of being an alternative provider. Other things that I want to mention in particular in terms of looking at this is on the environmental protection side, in terms of what we're doing there to be cleaner and greener. If you look at it, by moving away from coal, we're making huge progress right there. Coal presents a huge amount of issues and problems in terms of mercury, in terms of precursors to acid rain, SOx and NOx, in terms of particulate material. So by moving away from coal, by moving to more of this kind of pie, if you look at it, again, as I said early on, eliminating waste is the best answer. We don't have any of those 3 categories of issues, period. If you look at renewables, it addresses all 3 categories. And actually, natural gas is not quite as good as those, but it's much better than coal with respect to those categories. So in terms of our environmental health in Michigan, we're moving in a positive direction with this plan. And we should be proud of that. A couple other things I would mention in particular that I haven't spent a lot of time highlighting, I've talked more about just generation capacity at the large-scale level, is we need to continue to work on alternative fuel vehicles. We need to look at intelligent connected vehicles. Because again, what we do on the road makes a big difference in terms of energy in our state and environmental issues and reliability and affordability, all those kind of considerations. The other area that's drawn a lot of attention is this whole issue of oil and gas exploration in our state. And I'm proud to tell you that just yesterday we filed the rules, or the rules were filed by the DEQ, and they'll take effect today to improve our rules on fracking. Fracking's been a subject of much controversy. Michigan has a tremendous track record, though. We've fracked over 10,000 wells in our state without any real problems. We're a poster child for how it could be done appropriately. We actually have been working with the University of Michigan on the Graham Sustainability Institute on what would be good future practices, and we're incorporating a number of those practices in the rulemaking process we're going through now. We're talking about better and more water testing, what tools to use, more disclosure on some of the chemical elements that's involved in the process, and better notice periods. So we're being proactive on working on that to be more environmentally sensitive, while at the same time recognizing it's great to have natural gas in our state. Let's take advantage of it in a positive, constructive way, in a thoughtful way in relationship to the rest of the country. So there's a lot of information here. It's kind of like going to a class here for a mini session. But I'm excited to step back and look at it. We had a program where we made some very good progress because renewables actually turned out to be very competitive in terms of pricing over the last few years. We actually did well on energy waste elimination. But if you look at that, look at where we can go from 2015 to 2025. We should have a 10-year plan, because if you're talking about generation capacity, it takes about 5 years to really plan on changing generation capacity. So we needed a longer-term plan to look at this, and we need to work together on this, and we need to change a number of our policies and practices. We need to empower the MPSC more to be a partner, working with our utilities and other providers to be proactive. I need the support of my great partners in the legislature, and we've had some great discussion already. I appreciate both the House and the Senate have already been active on this topic, and I believe we're in the same ballpark. We may use different terminology or characterizations, but I think we're all pointed in the same direction to say, let's move from coal to cleaner sources that longer term give us better affordability and reliability. And it's a great direction to take. The hallmark that people may not have been thinking about as much, that I am absolutely passionate about, that I will not give up emphasizing, and I tend to be fairly tenacious once I have a topic, is this issue of eliminating energy waste. Because one problem when you have this discussion, and I apologize for making this more complicated with more graphs than probably you ever imagined, is usually what the problem is everyone always goes to this graph, this pie chart, or that pie chart, the one on the right there. They always go to the pie chart that has the generation piece. And they forget the eliminating waste piece. And if you look at it, there is no better answer for affordability, reliability, and environmental outcomes than that piece. And that's a lot of great employment work opportunities for good, hardworking people to make sure we're doing that. And we've proven it's cost efficient. This is doing it not in terms of mandating an answer, but letting the market work. To set a strong goal to say, let's get to 15%. And then when you do the economic analysis, my hope and what I believe would happen over the next 10 years is we'll exceed that. Again, we only put up half the stuff on the list that made economic sense to get to 15%. And then you simply say nuclear has an important continuing role to play, and then renewables and natural gas, we have to respect what the marketplace does. We have to understand that. We have to understand the federal government is going to present us challenges. But then let's build kind of a baseline model between 30 and 40% between renewables and waste. And as things work out, and I hope they work even better than that, you can see these pies even grow larger than 40%. So I think it's a great outcome in terms of an exciting future. We were dealt a huge challenge about having all these coal plants go away. It's an expensive challenge because we're going to have to build lots of generation. But as you know, my view of the world is let's not dwell on our challenges or our problems. Let's turn them into opportunity. This is a great opportunity. This is an exciting opportunity. So I hope you leave here today. Most people don't get excited about energy policy. You can see I am. I hope you're leaving here today excited about energy policy at the broad level for the state of Michigan. But then I'll bring it back home to say the big answer is again, government has an important role to play by setting goals, by having good review structures to make sure we're following through, we're delivering on this, helping coordinate and manage this process. But a lot of it comes down to the individual level. It comes down to the level like I showed you. I've got a really simple application now that we can all do our part. We can actually save money, have a cleaner world, and have a better answer because of what we do day to day in just working with our families. And that's the part I ask you not to forget. Because when you take 10 million people potentially all working together on doing things like this, particularly even people that traditionally didn't have opportunities, renters that now would have an opportunity to do improvements and have them pay for themselves and have them save money, that's how we're going to make all this pie happen, by working together as a great team. So I appreciate your time and attention. I know there's going to be a lot of good legislative discussion. I look forward to that. That's part of the healthy process in a good democracy, and we've done this before, and we're going to do it this time, and I believe we'll come out with a solid outcome because of the partnership we have. So thank you for the time, and again, I encourage all of you to go on an awesome tour now to see a wonderful place with the EITC. So thank you so much for being here today.